Welcome to Locality's Making Bank podcast, where we continue our exploration of South Florida's entrepreneurial landscape with host Keith Costello, co-founder and CEO of Locality Bank. Sit back, relax, and let South Florida visionaries guide you on an entrepreneurial journey from tribulation to triumph, sharing the very stories that have shaped them.
Zein-Wolland, welcome to Locality Bank's Making Bank podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about our journey.
Yeah, well, this is really a special podcast for Ryan and I because you are the first nonprofit that we've had on, and we had the privilege of doing basically our whole, or a bunch of our staff went over and worked at the mobile school pantry. And it was such a phenomenal experience. We're like, well, who is this woman that started this? And we're like, well, that's kind of like an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs, we mostly think starting businesses, but we're like, here's a woman who started a nonprofit. So I was looking up the actual definition of entrepreneur, and it tends to be, taking risks to make money. You're taking risks, though, to help other people. You went out, and to me, that's really special because you weren't doing it for yourself. You weren't doing it to make money. You were doing it to help other people. So we really are excited to have you on today and unpack your story. So let's get started. So tell us about where you're from and where you grew up. And
Absolutely. So I am originally from Lebanon, born in Lebanon, raised here in Hollywood, Florida. My parents actually immigrated here in '84. I was a year old, and they came immediately to Hollywood and found roots here. My uncle was actually here with my aunt. They had already left and come here to Hollywood, and they actually opened a restaurant, a Lebanese restaurant, and a hotel when they first come to America. In Hollywood on Dixie. I remember it in Federal Highway, remember very clearly, kind of close to South Broward High School if you're a local. And my parents came and they, started working with my uncle in the restaurant business and managing the hotel that they had. They dabbled in some properties, and then, times got a little tough for our family. They kind of lost everything and had to reinvent themselves. And I remember my mom telling me stories of my father, doing whatever it took to provide for his family, even working at Albertsons, stocking groceries in the night shift, doing valet, working at Sears at the time, and then just growing up the ladder in these different positions, and eventually got into mortgages and in finance, where he was super successful, and then actually branched off on his own and created his own business. And then around the market crash, he left that and he began doing a little bit of business consultancy between here and the Middle East. And my mother was the CEO of our household. I am the oldest of four, 2 girls and 2 boys. We kept her very busy with different activities. And she certainly managed that home and us like clockwork.
Wow.
And instilled such great values and morals into us, and really was just so present in raising us and supporting our growing family over the years. And so I was taught at a young age. I just remember my mom going to, the giving part of kind of where that comes from, I think, is when we were kids, my mom during the holidays would always go to the Starting Place in Hollywood. And I remember we would go to the grocery store and she would pick out some turkeys. We'd pick out some of the sides and we would take them and we would drop them off at the Starting Place. That's where a lot of homeless individuals would be housed. They have a lot of housing there and they provide a lot of services. So we would go and drop these items off at the shelter. And our house was just always open to friends and family and community. I was on the cross country team and she was always, people were always coming to my house to hang out, and food was always very centered in my home being Lebanese. My mother could make 10 different things out of a bag of flour. And she was just so resilient and, just always using what we had to make the best meals to give not just us, but the neighborhood. So I learned hard work from a young age pays off. You stay determined and focused, no matter what the position is. You're not too good to do any kind of job is kind of like what I saw. And when the going gets tough, you have to roll up your sleeves and perhaps reinvent yourself for a better life, really. Wow. And I certainly see that my parents' sacrifices by just coming here and giving us the opportunity to have easier decisions in our adulthood has definitely made the difference for us as children.
That's amazing. And, there's a lot of, again, you're running a nonprofit, but the things you're talking about apply to every entrepreneur who's looking at, what motivates them and where do they come from. So you're growing up in South Florida, and then how do you decide, I guess what comes next when you graduate high school, and then what kind of things are you doing then?
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I was totally unsure of what I wanted to do. Had no idea. I kind of thought I wanted to be a fashion designer. And I went to the Art Institute in Fort Lauderdale for a short stint where I quickly realized I did not know how to sew anything. And I also did not know how to draw very well to sketch any kind of, fashion design. And I left the Art Institute. I went to Broward College, still kind of unsure of what I wanted to do, and took a little break. And then they did a program at the University of Miami, a paralegal program, where I hit the ground kind of running in that field. And I actually worked a little bit with Randstad at the time prior to getting my feet wet in the paralegal world, where I did a lot of job placement. I worked at so many different random places doing temp work. Wherever they needed me, I would go. And then I found my roots in the paralegal world. And I started doing paralegal work for a great law firm in Hollywood. And at the time, I had big dreams of running to be the mayor of Hollywood, the city I live in.
That could still happen.
I don't think so. That's definitely a full circle that will not happen. But I wanted to run to be the mayor of Hollywood. And I thought to myself, well, if I want to be the mayor, and, I was in my early 20s, and this was an ambition that I had, for later in life, that I needed to get to know my community, that I needed to understand what are the needs of my community if I wanted to run for office, so I could serve in a proper way and understand what I needed to do to make a tangible difference. So I started volunteering at a lot of different places in our community. I was working on a mortgage fraud case, doing paralegal work. I was getting paid like $40 an hour actually at that time, which was pretty cool. I didn't have a lot of hours, so I had flexibility to go and volunteer. And one of the places I was volunteering at was Feeding South Florida, which is our food bank down here. And I was just in the warehouse. I would go in my free time and I would check the dates on cans and make sure the foods that were being donated to them, were in good condition, weren't past its expiration, or by a certain extent of which, you don't have to throw away canned items that are expired by a few months. They still have a shelf life. So we were sorting through cans, and I would go frequently. And one of the main leaders of the agency relations department, which is in charge of all the organizations in Broward who receive, give out food to our community. She came in one day and was just asking me a little bit more about myself. And then she said, we have a position here available. Why don't you apply for it? And I said, I have no food bank experience, actually. And she's like, well, just apply. And I applied. She hired me, and I was immediately in charge of 80 soup kitchens and food pantries in Broward, and an additional 40 in Monroe, which were my favorite times because I could go drive down to the Keys to visit, organizations in the community. And I was the USDA monitor, which meant I was, pretty much making sure all the USDA commodities that come from the state, from the government, that are being given through food banks to organizations and churches to disperse to the community, were being stored properly, were not being sold or traded, that they were actually making it into the hands of families who were in need. And I just remember my first giveaway during my training, going to a church in Hollywood. And I just remember seeing the longest line for families waiting in line for food. And I just remember walking in and, watching what was going on, watching the system that they had in place there at the food pantry. And I remember just looking at the tables of food, and they were just filled with very unhealthy food items. And I said to myself, wow, people are waiting in food for this. And I couldn't believe it. And going back to the way I was brought up, food was so centered in my home. I couldn't believe that families were without, because I came from a privileged home. One, that people were hungry in America, in my community down the street. And kind of like we live in a bubble sometimes, and you don't realize, right down the street in your neighborhood, there could be hungry children and families. And I remember seeing this long line with kids running around and adults waiting for this food, and it forever changed me. And my time at the food bank changed me. And I stayed there for 2 years. And my boss at the time, Julie Zeno, she really mentored me a lot, this woman, Julie Zeno. She kind of took a shot on me, it felt like, and taught me so much. Although I knew nothing about the industry, I certainly in those 2 years learned more than I could have ever learned at a school by just that hands-on life experience and kind of like, here, do this, and maybe not knowing how to do it, but she just gave me the opportunity to kind of figure it out. And I did. And when I left and I followed her the Education Fund in Miami-Dade, we worked with Food Forest, and I worked with the Art of Found Objects Gala, where I also learned some more things about the nonprofit world, just about the fundraising aspect of it, about silent auctions, about the big galas that organizations hold and how they put them together. And then I left there after some time. I went back to doing some paralegal work and hated it. And I was like, what am I doing here? And I actually went back to Randstad, and they placed me at the time with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, back to the nonprofit world. And it was a temp job working for their school and youth program. And I loved it, and they loved me, and they immediately hired me directly then through the company. I remained working at LLS for 4 years, and I worked in both the programs of the school and youth program, where another great learning opportunity. My boss one day was like, hey, I can't go to do it in a school assembly at a school. Could you go and do it for me? And I was like, well, I've never done school assemblies before. That sounds a little intimidating. I'm not a public speaker. She's like, you'll be fine. Follow the script. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. It was terrifying walking in to speak to all these little elementary age students about blood cancer of all things. But I had opportunities and leaders and just in different roles that empowered me to learn and to grow and go and do that assembly, go and do this report that you may know nothing about. And just, I think I was always eager to do better and to grow and to show that I could do it kind of mentality. And so it was just great opportunities that I think I just always took advantage of. And then I had another great leader at LLS, Bickley Ludwig. When I worked with her with the Man and Woman of the Year Gala, I also learned so much about people, relationships, how they connect to mission, the whys of why somebody would donate. So it was just, I was very fortunate to work with such great organizations over time and kind of build my resume and my knowledge over those years of working for so many wonderful nonprofits in our community. In my last year at LLS, I just had a friend reach out to me, knowing that I had some background from the food bank and food, and had another friend that wanted to partner up together to help feed some families for Thanksgiving. And he's like, Z, do you have some families that we, could feed for the holidays? And I reached out to a principal of one of the schools I just did an assembly at and asked him if he had some families, that could use some food assistance for Thanksgiving. And he gave me the name of 10 families. And we went to a mobile park home in Emerald Hills, an affluent community, and a mile down the way was a mobile park home. And we went to go give a Publix boxed meal of like a turkey and sides to these families at this mobile park home. And I just remember going on Thanksgiving morning in 2013 and giving out these meals and seeing the conditions that families were living in, with tarps covered over their homes, with refrigerators on the outside of their mobile park homes, and then just children running around, clueless to the environment that they were living in. And I remember just going home, and I don't know what came over me, but I just started researching food pantries, and I came across a school pantry program in another state. It was kind of funded through like Target, and they provided a library to the school, and then they also gave them like funding to provide like a closet filled with shelf-stable food items. So a lot of like box top items, fruit cups, peanut butter and jelly in the school, where the guidance counselor would help kids and families who may need food assistance. There was no fresh items. And I said, wow, maybe I can do this. And then I, continued to research. There was no food pantries that were happening in schools in Florida at the time. And I said, well, maybe I can do a school pantry just like in this other state without Target, and try to just get my community and friends and lean back on some of my resources when I worked at the food bank to see how I can get food and start something on my own. How do I start a nonprofit? Started Googling. And I, figured out how to start a 501c3. I called a friend who knew a friend who gave me the number of an attorney who kind of told me what were the parameters of what I needed to get started. And I called up that principal and I said, listen, I think I want to start a school pantry in your school. Will you give me a chance to try it? And he said yes. And 3 months later, we started our first school pantry.
Which school?
Starling Elementary in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
And I remember there was probably 3 perishable items, like really ugly oranges, fancy baby carrots, and like plantains that were very yellow, almost going bad, and like almost expired yogurt and like 3 other, dry good items. And I waited for people to come. And there was just like the custodians of the school that came that day. And then the word started just to get out. And I continued to come. I continued to bring more variety of foods, working with more friends and families to do food drives.
What year was the first one?
In 2013.
2013, wow.
We're talking, over a decade later, here we are.
Wow. And so from there, then you started getting more phone calls and the word started to spread. And
so from there, in year 2, as somebody who's starting something, you got to put yourself out there, right? If people, like any product, like any business that's for profit, if people don't know what you're selling, they can't come and purchase it. Right. They can't benefit from your service or product if they just don't know you exist. And so from early on, I just, started a social media page on Facebook. That was before Instagram was a thing. I started a Facebook page. I started throwing up whatever graphics I can put together. My sister was kind of like my website and social media graphic design person because she was very talented. She majored in English and creative writing at FIU, and she had a lot of talents she could share with me. So really leaning on people really helped me start Mobile School Pantry in year 1, just kind of getting the word out, letting friends know, like, hey, this is what I'm up to. Can you help me? I'm trying to collect cereal this month. I need pasta for 51 families. The first year we fed 51 families. And as I mentioned, it just grew around every holiday. Like it's spring break, highlighting that people are hungry during spring break. Kids are home from school. They don't get breakfast and lunch when they're home from school. Help me, collect food or funds. But year 2, something pivotal happened that really helped Mobile School Pantry grow and be more strategic. And it's all really about putting yourself in the right places. I was at a food insecurity forum in Fort Lauderdale, actually. And everyone was just sharing about their programs. And I was sharing about this new exciting school pantry that I started, that I was trying to grow. And the Children's Service Council of Broward, Arnold Baptiste at the time, he's retired now, was in the room with Michael Farver from the South Florida Hunger Coalition. And after we all shared, what our programs were, they came up to me after, and Arnold, specifically came up to me, and he said to me, Z, we love this. How can we get this into more schools? Can you get me a budget together and send me a proposal? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. And I went back and I was like, I've never done a budget before. I've never really done a formal proposal before. How do I do it? Research, leaning on some, calling Julie Zeina, like, hey, Julie, what do you think? How should I approach this? At the time I was working with a friend. Hey, can you help me get a spreadsheet together with this budget? And then also realizing, taking a step back, because he had asked, like, hey, I was currently only at 2 schools. I had just launched to a secondary school. They're like, could you increase to 3 more schools? And I was like, okay. But when I went down to do the budget, I was like, that's too big for me. I need to realize what my capacity is. But if I'm not ready for that growth, it's not going to be sustainable. And I'm just going to look terrible. And this isn't going to go anywhere.
That's a great lesson for anybody in a profit business too.
Yeah.
I mean, you can grow too fast and people will throw money at you, and that's part of that discipline. So that's great. Keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I wrote the proposal and I was like, okay, this is what I'm offering in this proposal and the breakdown in the budget. We're going to remain at the 2 schools and you're just going to help me increase to 1. Actually, you're going to cover the 3, but I'm only going to go to increase my capacity to 1 more school. So they funded not just the increase now of this 1 school, they funded the 2 other locations that I was already working with. So essentially I still got the 3, but without going and expanding to 3 more additional sites, I got them to commit to helping me expand to 1 more site and to sustain the 2 sites that I was already operating, which was a win for us as an organization. I was like, and they were like, this is going to be a pilot program. We're going to see if you're a steward of your word and, whatever you presented on this piece of paper, give or take, that, this is what you were able, X amount of families served. This is the scope of the work in the contract. And year 1 was wildly successful. They loved the program. We, overperformed. And in our reporting, they saw the value in what we were doing. And they saw another great opportunity for us as a growing nonprofit, and still even being small now, but we were so privileged in year 2 to partner with CSC because they set the tone for us as an organization of what the expectation was going to be from big organizations in our community who are our funders. What are they going to want from you? What are their asks going to be? They want to track, the impact. They want to see the outcomes. They don't want to just give you the dollars. So it set the tone for us to put processes and systems in place, like tracking our families. How often are they attending? How many families? How many in their household? What are some of their circumstances? Are they employed? Are they not employed? Not that would make a difference in the service, but to understand the story of the person, the people that we're actually helping. And so we were very lucky. And then from there, year after year, it grew. They always gave us more money. We expanded year after year. And then in year 5, year 7, we had to apply for an RFP through them. So, we received funding, through a pilot program. And then it was like, okay, now you got to go with the big dogs. You got to go and apply this way. And I was like, oh my goodness. And we applied for the RFP. At that time also, I would say a few months prior, growth comes in so many different ways. And, early days, I had family and friends as board members. And 4 years ago, I got a little more strategic in my board. Right around the time of that RFP, actually, came at a perfect time because I had, other eyes, other leaders committed to the same vision I had, helping me with this RFP in a more strategic way, telling our story, showing the impact, in a very intentional way in that RFP to where we got not just funded again, but we got more funding and we were able to expand to more schools again, once again. It's a great lesson to put yourself in the room with the right people and realize, I kind of live my life with 4 Ps. Really purpose, because purpose is everything, and sticking to your purpose and your mission and not veering off of your mission. The second you lose sight of your values and your purpose and you try to change them for things is where you lose sight of everything and things can get chaotic. And then the other one is partnerships, because without partnerships and collaboration, you can't do any of the work. It takes a team of people who are committed to the same work in order to move things forward. And then, so we've got purpose, partnerships, persistence. You will get a lot of no's. A lot of people you might feel some days that you're talking to them and you're talking about that mission and you feel so passionate about what you do, because I feel so passionate about what I do, because I know it makes a difference. But sometimes you don't feel like maybe the other person on the other end gets it. And sometimes they won't. But it's a numbers game. The more you share your mission, the more you tell your story, or the more that people see that product that you're selling over and over and over again, they're going to start to believe in it. When you start to surround those partners around you, that builds trust in your product or your mission, aligning with the right partners. And then I would say the last one is people, because everything that we do, whether it be on our lean, mighty team, is about people, the people who are working with us to push that needle forward. And the people who are at the center for us as an organization is the people we serve. They're at the center of everything that we do and every decision that we make. Their voices, echo in my head because they rely on us. And everything we're doing here at Mobile School Pantry is about people. That's what gives us our purpose.
Wow. Because I'm writing these down. I'm thinking, so any entrepreneur in business, you're going to embrace these same things.
Yeah.
It's like starting a business, or in my case, starting a bank.
Yeah.
In our case, right? It's so difficult and so hard. And so if you don't really believe, it's the same. I'm sitting here going, it's the same thing. If we didn't believe, and I say we because everybody here is an entrepreneur in our bank, if we didn't believe in what we're doing, we couldn't do it because it's so hard to start from the, I mean, and we talk about these same things: purpose, mission, partnership, persistence, people. I wrote those down, and that is a great lesson for everybody. So I just want to make a comment because we got exposed. I think it was like a cold email that came in, and I'm a sucker for cold emails. Like every so often I'll go into like my, my other box, and I'll see, what's in there? And I'm like, but you were reaching out, I think it was for money, like, because we're a bank.
So my incredible board president, who's beyond strategic and amazing, and who's made this organization what it is today in these last 5 years, we've got the board committed to sending out, and our board is truly a working board. It isn't a fancy board. There's no, buy-in. There's no minimum donation. Everyone is really rolling up their sleeves. They're in the nitty-gritty sometimes of the daily things. We just completed a recipe book. One of my board members is a graphic designer for Sandals and Beaches Resort, and we were, building out a whole recipe book and copy for it, and so it was intense. But my board president, was sending her emails, and she reached out, because we have our mobile market sponsorships for our bus Max. So we have 2 programs: our school pantry program, which I wish I would have gotten into at the beginning. Our mission, our heart, and our soul is to provide fresh fruits and vegetables to children and families at low-income schools in Broward. And like you said, you were there, and we do this by setting up in the schools a client choice market where families are actually empowered to make their own healthy choices rather than being handed a box or a bag of items.
Let me just say one thing about that too. I mean, we did that, and because I said, I think you were asking for money. I said, we don't have any money.
Yes.
We're a new bank, we're a startup, but we will give our time.
Yes.
So we'll volunteer. And so we had a bunch of us go over there. Ryan was there. And we had, first of all, this operation, we've done other nonprofit stuff. And sometimes you go in and like you're standing around for 4 hours waiting for somebody to tell you what to do. Not here. We got there. It was like the Marines. I mean, it was like, you do this, you do that. Right, Ryan? I mean, it was a well-oiled machine. And that food came in, and we were told, we were busy the whole time, which for us, we want to do that. We don't want to come stand around for 4 hours. And then the people that were lined up and coming in, and they were so, first of all, I was amazed how many people were lined up to get food. Because like you said, you don't realize how many people need food in our community, right? Yeah. Or, in nice neighborhoods even. And then, the looks on their faces and the gratitude that for anybody who's listening, so I'm plugging, you need to reach out to help, because you will get more out of it than you give. And we're doing it again. I know we're reaching out to set up another time for us to do it, because it was one of the best experiences for us working with a nonprofit.
Well,
so
I appreciate
that's
that.
Kudos to you because of the organization and what you've done to make this such, and I was working right next to your father.
Yeah.
I'm like, to start chatting with me. So I said, I'm her dad. I'm like, oh, okay. I know why you're here. So
yes. Family was, really the heart and soul of the mission from the early days. My parents, so in 2013, excuse me. So 2013, I started the journey. 2014, Mobile School Pantry became a nonprofit and received its 501c3 status. And then in 2015, I had my son, Luca. So, totally talk about growth happening, so many exciting things. But without my parents really jumping in the early days specifically to support, I just had a newborn. I remember when I had Luca, I think I took a month, not even a month off. Actually, I had Luca on October 23rd, 2014. Gobble giveaway was Thanksgiving, November. So I was quickly planning our Thanksgiving giveaways. And I was at every single Gobble giveaway that year also. But my parents were always a big support. My dad was always at a lot of the giveaways in the early days doing sign-in when I had no one to help me with sign-in. My husband, when I was pregnant specifically, especially in those early days, was going down with me to Homestead at 3 a.m.
Wow.
I just gave up my 3:30 in the morning hat just, I would say like 2 months ago. Getting up in the morning to get the best produce means getting up early, and showing up on time. And, it isn't, people see things. They may see our pictures on social media. They may assume we have a massive warehouse. We don't. We're looking for one. If anyone watching this wants to help with that. They also may assume that we have a huge team. We don't. We have a very lean team. In fact, I just hired our pantry, our programs associate. We did have an amazing director of programs at one point for 2 years. 2 years ago was the first time we hired our first time full-time staff. We're going into our 12th year this year. So it took a long time. I think that was the hardest thing for us as an organization, and still is something. In order to scale something, you need people. And I think this is the year for us as an organization, is increasing our capacity by getting a bigger team and investing in our, processes and systems in a deeper way. And that incorporates people. I always tell people everywhere I go, I will dig a hole with my hands until I get to the other side. But if you gave me a shovel, a bulldozer maybe, and a committed team of people who are committed to the same vision, we can feed more families today.
That's awesome.
In South Florida, and according to No Kid Hungry, 70% of Floridians or 72% of Floridians are feeling the pressure of just going to eat healthy, to go to the grocery store. And 60% of those individuals are earners between $50,000 and $100,000.
Wow.
That's to show that people are really, really stretched here in South Florida. So I think there are going to be a greater need for more organizations like Mobile School Pantry with all the federal cuts to big programs like SNAP and WIC, and just the cuts in general to some of the bigger bills that provide some assistance to the food bank with some of their purchasing. I think organizations are going to have to be very innovative coming up in these coming years. There's so much happening and so many changes, and just the cost of life is just astronomical, I think, especially living here in South Florida.
Yeah, especially here when we hear about that all the time about how the wages here just are not can't keep up with the cost of living here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's such a discrepancy. So, well, this has been a real pleasure having you on. We're going to go now to the lightning round, and then we'll finish up with how people can help and get in touch with you. So, what is your favorite book?
So I have a lot of favorite books. I love Brian Weiss. If you haven't read some of his books, very interesting. But I think a favorite that I can really stand by is Dare to Lead. It's pretty impressive. I just feel like it just, as a leader, just shows you that you have to be vulnerable. You also have to be very direct in your messaging with your team, with your community, whatever your mission is, sticking true to your purpose, and having hard conversations. I think that's something I struggle with in this leadership role. It's something, as you're running an organization or a business, there's so many hats you don't know, I feel like I'm HR sometimes, I'm mopping the floor sometimes. There's so many hats you wear and you're always learning. So that book is just really inspiring and just gives you some tips and tricks. There's one that I'm about to read called Be the Unicorn. It sounded very interesting just from the highlights of it, just in standing out in the world, that sometimes being a unicorn is important.
Is there a song from your youth that is your theme song?
I don't really have like a song, but I do play a lot of Bob Marley at our school pantries. If you come out to either a mobile market or a school pantry, there's just something about the messaging and just, sticking together, that one love feeling that just hypes me up. I think.
Very cool. Yeah, we did hear a lot of
brings you back to the
Bob Marley.
islands, like
That's
vacation
awesome.
mode.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received is really to trust yourself, go with your gut, and also not to veer from mission. Stay true to your values. It will always keep you on the right path.
Very good. Now, in terms of, we're talking about food, so I have to ask, what's your favorite local restaurant?
My mom's house. Outside of my mom's house, I love seafood. I love a whole fried fish, although I eat very healthy. I do love a whole fried yellowtail snapper at Garcia's in Miami.
Wow. Okay. I love yellowtail snapper too. What's something you're grateful for today?
Honestly, I'm grateful to do the work that I do and to be healthy in order to keep doing it. And of course, my family that supports me every step of the way.
What is, so we talked about this one before. So who is someone living or dead that you would like to have dinner with if you could?
So this was interesting. There's so many people, especially like close relatives, that I wish I could talk to again. That's something that right away came to mind. Things that you want to tell people that have gone that you'd want to share with them. I know I have like a grandfather figure, Sam Barry, that he wasn't my grandfather, but I know that I would love to share with him all the special things happening in my life and my family's life and his family's life. He's missing out on so many awesome things, but I think Martha Stewart.
Wow.
Just because that's an impressive woman.
Oh, yeah.
She's been able to just reinvent herself, over and over again. And she's just brilliant. I would love to know how she does it all and squeezes it all into a day. I mean, there's nothing she doesn't do. And talk about entrepreneurship. She has so many businesses. So just how to do it all, I guess. Would love to sit and pick her brain.
What's a fear that you've overcome?
I think that's a tough one too. I think for me, pertaining to like my organization, a fear that I've always had from the early days was being sustainable. Is this going to carry on after me? Because I want it to carry on after me. I want this to be around for families for years to come. And I think, definitely have overcome that. But I think a fear, I was afraid of snakes, and I have a 9-year-old, and I've held a few snakes recently. Last year he was convincing us to buy a snake. So I would say that's a fear that I've conquered.
Okay. All right, good. I think, a lot of people are scared of snakes. What is an activity, what do you do to relax or exercise, or do you have a hobby that's...
So I think that's something that I need to work on is how to relax. That is a special one that I need growth in still. But for me, what I do to just relax and just hit that reset button is really going to the beach with my family. I am a big lover of Hollywood Beach, Dania Beach. I'm always there on the weekends. That is my reset, just connecting with just the environment, kind of taking a big breath with my family, eating healthy snacks at the beach. And just, I was a cross-country runner. It's hard to get out and run in this heat sometimes. And I want to try paddleball. I haven't tried that yet, but keeping active and keeping fit is lifting cases of potatoes and onions sometimes for me.
Yeah, we got a good workout that day, I have to say. So you've done such an amazing job with the Mobile School Pantry. And thank you so much for what you're doing for our community. Really, we want to help you. And so tell us how people can get in touch with you, and we'll put this in the notes and everything so that people can reach out like we did. If you have a business, or if you don't have a business,
Absolutely.
If you just want to volunteer, I guarantee you will get more out of it than you give.
Absolutely. Yeah. We do a lot of team buildings. If you want to close your office down, you want to send half your office, you want to come for an hour or 4 hours, you can come at any time to our school pantries. We have school pantries twice a week. So there are a lot of opportunities on Tuesdays and Fridays typically.
How do they get a hold? Because you don't want them sitting there waiting for a cold email. How do they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me directly at Zeina, Zeina, at mobileschoolpantry.org. And you can find us at mobileschoolpantry.org is our website.
Perfect. Okay. And do you get funding like from United Way? And
we do partner with the United Way of Broward. They are a wonderful partner through their Project Lifeline project. And really the Children's Service Council of Broward County has been such an instrumental partner in everything that we do. The Community Foundation of Broward.
All great organizations.
All amazing partners who make what we do possible.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Z, great podcast.
Thank you.
Our first of a kind. And
Thank you.
I think a lot of lessons there for business people, entrepreneurs, for people thinking about starting a nonprofit, and for people who want to help and get involved in the community. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Localities Making Bank podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to catch the latest episodes, and visit localitybank.com today to learn more about all the benefits of banking local.